How about now? Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, please jump in if anything goes wrong here, like you can't hear us. But we just want to welcome everybody, whether you've been here for the duration or it's your first time here. We welcome you to this group of people. And like we've mentioned many times, and for those of you who haven't been here before, we started this when COVID first started as a way of connecting with people when we're all stuck at home and needing some resource and some connection and some ideas on how to enrich your relationships, whether they're your partner at home or your friends, your family. And we're here to provide some tips and ideas, and most of all, just kind of relax and have fun and maybe learn something along the way. So today,
Introduce yourself.
And I'm Debbie.
And I'm Craig.
And then that's the introduction.
We're both couples therapists, in case you didn't know.
Here in San Diego. And so today we're going to be talking about the 5 love languages. And it's a book, started as a book by a couples therapist. His name is Gary Chapman. In 1992, I think he wrote the book, and it became a wildly successful bestseller for many, many years. And many of you probably have heard of it, probably are familiar with the love languages. And then there's probably some of you who I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about what they are, why they're important, and how you can use these love languages to actually create more loving connection in your relationship. Our book, The Mindful Couple, it's 52 weekly strategies to greater love and connection, and actually understanding the love languages and using them is one of our strategies. So let's talk about the love languages and why they're so important. There's 5 love languages, and we're going to go through each one at a time. But why are they so important? Why is it important to understand what your love language is, and more importantly, what the love language of your partner, or it could even be family member, it could be kids. Why is that so important? And I think the reason it's so important is that when you first meet, let's just take your spouse or your partner. When you first meet each other, it's like things are great. You master all the love languages. You're like amazing at all of them. You're good at giving them words of affirmation. You're good at physical touch. You're good at being present. You've got it all going on, and it comes so naturally because your partner's perfect. But then over time, you realize that they're not perfect, and we get into annoyance and frustration and conflict. And that's when it becomes really important to understand, what is it that your partner really needs to feel loved? What is his or her love language? And Gary says that in his book, he says that it's like when you speak a love language, it's like speaking a regular language. So if I speak my love language to Craig and it's not his love language, it doesn't land that well. So if my love language is words of affirmation, but he doesn't care so much about that, he wants physical touch, I can tell him I love him, he's wonderful, he's handsome, he's sexy, and he's like, yeah, but can you do this to me? Can you do this to me and look me in the eyes? Can you give me a hug? Can you give me a long kiss? It's not my words, just kind of like, they're nice, but. So when we understand somebody's love language, we're actually able to touch their heart and feel what we want to feel in our relationships. So that's what we're going to talk about.
So I wanted to share with you, before we take a deeper dive into love languages, a couple of things that I've learned over the years that have been really, really helpful in understanding why love languages are really important. And by the way, if anybody has a question and you want to type it in the chat room, we'll stop everything. And Sarah's helping us again today, thank God. And she'll be here to help and read the question out loud to everybody. So feel free to jump in. But my 3 takeaway learnings about why love languages are so important started with something I read by one of my mentors, John Gottman. So John Gottman was a mathematician before he became a relationship therapist. So he was really into statistics. And he actually started something called the Love Lab, where he would actually bring couples into a laboratory and wire them up with all kinds of things. And he'd watch them and they'd observe them and they rank them, and they were kind of doing some really amazing, amazing work. Today, he's one of the greatest, most well-known, well-respected relationship therapists in the world. Anyway, he came up with a formula that for every one negative thing that happens in your relationship, you need at least 6 positives to balance out the negative. And that, he calls it the 1-to-6 ratio. And, you know, it like hit me like a ton of bricks. It made so much sense, because when you have a big conflict or a big fight in your relationship, it seems so weighty, you know? It seems like you would need a lot more positivity going on throughout the relationship on a regular basis to be able to bear the weight of that one big argument that doesn't get resolved. So then we moved into, Debbie talked to me about it, my second big learning. Maybe you could talk a little bit about Stephen Covey's emotional bank account. This one hit me too as a big learning.
I mean, even before we talk about that, I want to say about the ratio of 5-to-1 or 6-to-1. And that is so important when we're talking about love languages, because again, it's when I'm speaking your love language, it lands as a positive.
Right. Exactly.
So it could be a positive in my mind, but if it's not a positive in your mind, then it doesn't land, doesn't count.
Right.
Which gets us to Steve Covey's emotional bank account. And Stephen Covey says that, the author of 7 Habits to Highly Effective People, if you're over like 50, you get that. If you're not, Sarah, do you know Stephen Covey?
Because of Craig.
Okay. Like when I was working in organizations, Stephen Covey came and taught us the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he was like a god, right? Yeah. And we got trained in his methods, but like now nobody knows who he is. Right. So anyhow, it's a good concept because nobody knows it anymore. And he talked about the emotional bank account is when 2 people are interacting. If I do something positive for you, it lands as a deposit. Right. But if I do something negative, then it's a withdrawal. And so the concept of the bank account is you want to make sure that you have enough deposits in there, so that if something happens, you have some emotional collateral to work with. Mm-hmm. You're not working from nothing. And that's why couples, when they start to fight and they don't have the skills and resources to repair, restore, connect, and create love and connection, that they're empty, they're depleted. And that's when it gets really scary and dangerous, and that's when we see them, right?
And the love languages are money in the bank. When you create a connection based on your partner's love language, boom, cash in the bank. So when a withdrawal is necessary, like a negative argument, whatever, it can manage it well.
Right, but so here's an example of how the emotional bank account doesn't work so well. If I just think about it as deposits, for example, I enjoy receiving flowers, but not so much, a lot. I don't enjoy getting them a lot. Why? Because they take work. I have to make sure there's water in them, and then they start to die off, and then I have to empty the water, put fresh water in. I mean, it sounds terrible, but it's really the truth for me. And so if Craig were to bring home flowers, it's nice, but I know in the back of my mind what I have to do to maintain it. So if we're looking at the emotional bank account, it's a deposit because his intention was so pure, but this much of a deposit.
It's a small deposit.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's why the love languages is so important, is because it informs us what's really important. Right. So.
You have a question.
I have a question. Okay, great.
Can you speak a little more to the 1-to-6 ratio in the context of the law of attraction? Sometimes I feel like when something negative happens between my partner and I, we experience a snowball effect. How can you balance the reality of conflicts occurring with the reality that negative attracts negative and positive attracting positive?
That's a great question. So it's really, really easy. I remember in organizations with performance appraisals, I trained managers on how to give them. And the problem with that was, they could say all these positive things, but the minute they said one negative thing, that's the only thing I could focus on, or the person could focus on, was the negative thing. It's human nature. It's part of our psychology. It's part of how we're wired, actually, because we're wired to attend to threats in our environment. We're biologically wired for that. And so when something negative comes, we're naturally and neurochemically designed to put more focus on that. And that's part of the reason why that ratio is so important. So your question is a real good one, and that is connecting to the law of attraction. If I continue to focus on the negative, I'm going to get more negative. And that is a fact too. Once we understand that if we focus on the negative, whatever we focus on expands, then we have choice. We have choice to find center and focus on something else that's equally as true about our partner.
Yeah. And I think with the law of attraction, what I take away from that is that if I focus on the negative, as Debbie says, it expands. If I focus on the positive, so it's really kind of beginning to look more for the positives. I like to call it, you become a positivity detective, so that you're basically spending your days looking for things to appreciate about your partner. So, it takes a conscious effort, and the more you do that, the more it will expand. Again, law of attraction, what you focus on. So, yeah, I mean, that's how I handle it. But of course, listen, we're human beings. You're going to have breakdowns. And I think we spent the whole session last time talking about repairs after an argument. So you're always going to have breakdowns, but as long as you repair the breakdowns, you're in good shape, So I want to say one last thing and before we get deeply into the love languages, about mind reading. This concept came to me, this was one of my other learnings, is that a lot of times we expect our partners to know what makes us feel loved and cared about. It's almost like an infantile kind of a fantasy. If you think about it, you had your mom and your dad when you were a little baby attending to all of your needs, and they knew spontaneously or tried to figure out what you needed. So we have that in us, that our partner will just know what we need. But that gets us into a lot of hot water, because that's thinking our partner can read our minds. So a lot of times what we'll hear when couples come into our office is, I don't want to have to tell him what I need. He should just know, or
We hear that a lot.
If he doesn't know, he must not really love me if he doesn't know what I need.
I've told him in the past, so why should I even bother telling him again?
Exactly. So this concept of mind reading brings a lot of negativity into the relationship. What we need to do, it's a very simple solution to managing this. So guess what it is. How do you figure out what your partner needs, what their love language is, what they want to feel loved and cared about?
Ask them.
You ask them. It's a brainstorm. You ask. But we don't do that. A lot of times we don't. I want to give a quick example. I'm kind of evolving my love languages. One of them is gifts. I like to receive. I didn't always know that, but I like to receive gifts. So my birthday was recently, and Debbie asked me, "What do you want for your birthday?" Now she could have gone out, just figured it out, maybe thought about it, bought something, and it would have been fine. But she asked me specifically, "What do I want?" And I really thought about it, and what I wanted was a turntable, because I love the sound of the albums, the old LPs, and I love the covers, and I wanted to start collecting again. She bought me a beautiful turntable, and that landed like boom! Wow, that's exactly what I wanted, and you got it. So that was a good example, I think, of asking for what you want. She said, "What do you want?" I told her, and it worked out really well.
It was a lot less expensive when you just wanted words of affirmation. It's a whole different line item.
Gifts are more expensive than words of affirmation.
No, but for me, it was a surprise that was so important, and it landed so well because Craig's, and we're going to get into what they are, but Craig's love language up until that present was words of affirmation.
Right.
And so it's questioning his what his love language is. But I think that brings up a good point that we're going to make here, and then we're going to dive in. And that is knowing your partner's love language is really important. And there's a primary and a secondary. In other words, there's one that's really important, and there's kind of like a backup. But people do change.
Mm-hmm.
And, so they can shift. And your job as a partner is to stay on top of it and always be monitoring. Did that really land for him?
Yeah.
Did that really connect to make him feel loved and special?
Right.
So it's not just knowing it, it's just staying on top of it.
So as we jump into the actual love languages, think about for yourself. Think about where you think you fall primarily. And, then I'm going to be asking you at the end of the session to have a conversation with your friend, your partner, your parent, whoever you can think of being with. If you're with somebody now, that's fine. And have a conversation, and you're going to list your five love languages that would really serve you, and you're going to share it with each other.
And there's free tests online, so
Yeah.
It's really easy
but
to
this
figure
isn't
that out.
this isn't what their love language is. This is about what they actually want to feel cared for and loved.
Isn't that their love language?
Yeah, but I'm not going to diagnose their love language tonight.
No. I'm just saying
I'm
after.
saying, okay. So
What's the first one?
So what's the first one? The first one, I actually said it wrong today. Sarah corrected me gratefully. I still don't know what it is. I'm calling it words. It's words of affirmation. Okay, and when I think of affirmation, I think of appreciations. So words of affirmation. So see if that resonates with you for a second, whether you like to receive words of affirmation from other people, whether your partner or family or employees.
So the words of affirmation are, according to Gary, is probably the most popular, the most
Common.
Yes, the most common. And so words of affirmation would be just, it would be important. For Craig, it is words of affirmation. So it's a thank you. It's when you did that, I really appreciated it. You're an amazing guy. Look at you, look so nice today.
Thank you.
He just sucks all that. I mean, he soaks it in.
I suck it up.
He does. And so it's just really, really important. And whenever I do give him words of affirmation, I can see he lights up. It really lands. He feels loved. He's being filled by me.
And I have to say that in our office, because we do a lot of private practice, the biggest thing we see is partners not feeling appreciated. You hear it constantly. I just don't feel appreciated by him. Or no matter what I do, it's never enough. So we do realize that this is a big one.
It's a big one. And I think what we tend to see is people who have a love language, like words of affirmation,
Right.
tend to be really good at it themselves. So that's how you can kind of get a hint as to what their love language is they're using it with you.
Yeah.
So Craig is really good at, he's constantly complimenting me, which I love. Words of affirmation, not my love language, but I really, really appreciate it. And he's good at it. So that's another way of kind of figuring out what's important to your spouse or your partners is, are they really good at it? My daughter's really good at words of affirmation. Yes. She's sensitive, she's observant, typical of people who are, have that as a primary love language, and they're paying attention.
So we want to share with you what we have found is a really incredible way of giving an affirmation, giving a words of appreciation to your partner. And you might want to get a pencil, but if you don't, or a pen, we'll send it to you. If you send us your email, we'll send you. It's a very short 3 sentences. I always tell people that this is low-hanging fruit in your relationship. Giving appreciations to each other is really quick, simple. It takes a second, but in terms of the emotional bank account, it's a lot of good cash in the bank. So I always highly recommend our couples do this, and we always teach them how to do this with each other. So it goes like this. I'm going to tell you the 3 lines first. One thing I appreciate about you is, and you want to be as specific as possible. If you can think about a specific thing that your partner did that day even. Second one is,
That's important.
That's important
because
to me because, and then fill in the blank. And the third part is when you did that, it made me feel, fill in the blank. So we're going to do one for you just so you can see what it looks like and sounds like. And I've had people break down and cry in my office because they haven't had one in a while. And it just feels so good. So we have not rehearsed this.
So normally this is how it goes because this is his love language. So we get into bed and Craig says, "Do you want to give me an appreciation?"
It's
okay,
true.
fine.
It's really
fine.
true.
Let me think.
Mhm.
Okay. So why don't you give me an appreciation?
Sure. Okay, so one thing, Debbie, that I appreciate about you is, let's see, we always get a joke because we really have to think about that. Okay. Think for a second.
You should have rehearsed it.
Yeah, I should have thought of one earlier.
It's really that hard.
You're going to get me in trouble. Let's see. Where were we today? I want to be very specific, and so I'm trying to think of a specific appreciation. Well, I'll just say, I'll keep it a little bit general. I really appreciate, again, that we have this beautiful moment in the morning where we get to sit down together and we have a cup of coffee. And I really appreciate that you take the time every morning not to jump out of bed, but to stay in bed, to get our coffee, and to connect before we start our days. And that's really important to me because it gives me an opportunity to sort of connect with you, kind of share some, our dreams that we had the night before, or maybe just what's in front of us for the day and catch up. And then before we go on with our day, we may not see each other the whole rest of the day. And that really makes me feel very connected and very loved, actually. So thank you.
You're welcome. That's nice. And if you want to deepen it, you can add on. And that reminds me of something that you got or didn't get in your childhood.
Right.
So what does it remind you of something you got or didn't get in your childhood?
Well, it's not something I got or didn't get. It's just something I never saw. I never saw my parents really take that amount of time to really connect with each other. It just was something I didn't see.
Right.
And so to have that, it's very special. So yeah.
Okay. Nice. So that's an appreciation.
So that's words of appreciation. That's affirmations. You can spend every day, like I say, be an affirmation watchdog and tell your partner, you don't want to be like the you don't want to be like the Swedish farmer who loved his wife so much that he almost told her.
So yeah, so we get into bed and Craig every single night will say, do you have an appreciation for me? And knowing that that's his love language, I try and meet that with a very loving presence.
Right.
Yeah.
So the next love language is quality time with each other. So let's talk about quality time.
So quality time is a really important one, and it speaks to presence. And I think in this day and age with cell phones and so much going on in the news and social media, and we have heavy work schedules, maybe not so much now, but we normally do, we're distracted and we're occupied. And we see that a lot with newlyweds or new babies come on board, or we have parents that are older and we're still maintaining kids. We're just overwhelmed. And so it gets to the point where we just feel like we don't have any quality time. And if that's your love language, which is quality time is the desire to be with my partner in complete presence. Doesn't matter what we're doing, but we're attuning to each other's needs. We're there for each other.
Exactly.
We're not distracted. And if that's your love language, then it's going to get tested during these times. And it's just really important to make it known. So Craig and I, quality time isn't really neither one of our love languages, but it's important to us. Like all of them, they're important, but not our primary language. And we found that the two of us, probably because it wasn't our primary love language, we're on the phone all the time, like constantly on the phone. And I started getting annoyed before you did. And I said, I just feel like we don't have any quality time together. I just feel like we're losing our connection. Like the phone's more important than us. And so we started this thing, we call it the Venmo game. And we decided it was really important to connect and to be present for one another. It's respectful, it's kind, it's connecting, it's loving. So we said, okay, this is the deal. We came up with this together, right?
Yeah.
So you take your phone, and this is how it works. If we're together and you take your phone and you tap it with your finger, you owe the other person whatever. We came up with a number. Could be $10, could be 50, could be 100, whatever it is you want. And you have to Venmo that person immediately after you do it. So we did this, and it was great for me because I was making like a lot of money on this game because Craig kept forgetting. And we did it for like, I don't know, a long time. And we realized that the behavior actually corrected itself and we could get rid of the Venmo game. Until we did, we got rid of the Venmo game, the behavior came right back.
Yeah.
And again, because it's not super critical with us with quality time, but then we realize it is important. It is important to connect. So the Venmo game is back on.
It's back on.
We're trying to be more mindful of it. But that's quality time, is the desire to really have the presence and the attention of your partner without being disrupted.
And the other thing we hear in relation to quality time in our office with our couples is, I don't feel like a priority.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's how quality time comes out when it's not there. So the point, of course, is to make your partner a priority. And another thing that Debbie and I did, because Debbie had more of an issue with this than I did. I'm more of a loner. I'm more of an introvert. She needs the connection and the socialization a little bit more than I do. So, and I work a lot. So she suggested, and I agreed, that we make Sunday our day. And we are together on Sunday, no plans, no work, just us. And if we do want to invite a couple over or we want to do something, of course, we check in with each other and make sure that that's acceptable to the other person. So now we pretty much kept to that. And I think it's really solved that problem of quality time together. And the last thing I want to say about quality time is that because we're talking about quality versus quantity, it doesn't have to be a long time, okay? Sometimes it can be an hour, but if you're giving your undivided attention for 1 hour, that's a lot. And the other thing is, it doesn't have to be anything in particular. It's whatever the two of you agree upon. I can go to Costco with Debbie and make that quality time.
You never want to go to Costco.
I know, but if I do go and she asks me to go and I go, I don't mind because I make it our quality time.
You're so distracted at Costco. Okay, but you get the idea.
You get the point. Trying to make a point.
No, I think we have quality time when we watch movies because we stay connected and we're talking about the movie while we're watching it.
Sometimes she talks a little too much.
That's a true story.
Yeah.
But anyhow, okay, so that's quality time.
Okay.
And
Next.
the next one, what's the next one?
Acts of service.
Acts of service. That's
Yes.
my love language.
Yes. She likes when I get on my hands and knees and scrub the floor.
Acts of service is, I feel loved when Craig does things for me because it takes his time. And, when he goes.
And you don't like to do it.
And I don't like to do it.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like a real act of love. Like even taking out the trash or getting me coffee or, whatever it is. It's like, I care about you. I love you. And I want to do things to make you happy.
Yeah.
And so that really lands for me.
Yep.
And you're really good about that. You're really good about, because he's sensitive and he senses the environment, he's really good at paying attention to what it is that I appreciate. Like if he does something and I really appreciate it, he's really good at continuing.
Especially, that's a good point. I wasn't even thinking about that, but it is the appreciation of the act of service. If I do an act of service and it falls flat for Debbie or she doesn't appreciate it.
You got to pay attention. Like, why do it again?
Right, exactly. Right. So that is a big piece of it.
Yeah. And when acts of service is your love language, it's really important to remember to appreciate the guy or the woman who's trying to fulfill that, speak your language.
Yes. I wanted to read some of that. I do a lot of acts. We have a comment.
Just a quick comment from Michelle, who said that watching these sessions together is a great slice of quality time for us.
Oh, that's nice.
Awesome. Very nice.
That's nice.
Another comment,
Okay.
and maybe this requires a remark, which is, seems like acts of service and quality time are similar and that they both are action-based.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You know, it's true. They are both active. Quality service, acts of kindness.
They're different in the sense that with acts of service, I'm doing something to please you.
Yeah,
Where quality time is really the connection.
connection. We're pleased
But
with
they
each
are
other.
action-based,
Yeah.
100%. And if my love language is acts of service and you do something and we're together and we're present together, it's also quality time.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing with quality time, I mean, with acts of service, I should say, a lot of couples, you know, our office where we see couples is like a laboratory for us. So I'm telling you what we see there because it's so interesting, really. But one of the things you see with acts of service is a tit for tat mentality. So, you know, I did this for you. You need to do this for me. It's almost like even unconsciously we're measuring it, you know, and that is something that can destroy the whole process. So acts of service are unconditional acts of giving. This is powerful. This is like unconditional love. Okay, it's something we all know the words, but probably none of us could ever achieve in reality.
Right.
To the fullest extent. But giving acts of service is very much like unconditional love. You want to expect nothing back in return.
Yeah.
You know?
And again, we've already said this, but you know, with my acts of service and your love language of words of affirmation, it's so important for me to really appreciate what he does give to me.
Yeah.
And then we're both speaking each other's love language. I don't think I always do, but you usually remind me. You usually ask for it. Like you'll say, did you appreciate that when I brought you your coffee?
Mm-hmm.
So he's good about asking for it, which is really good.
I'm
Okay, we got 10 minutes remaining, so we
I'm
gotta
practicing my therapy with Debbie.
go. I know.
Um,
It is.
I just wanted to pat myself on the back and tell you all the acts of service. Some of them.
Wait, we
Okay.
don't have time.
I
We
have
only 10
time for at
minutes.
least
Okay,
three. Okay. Here's one. Okay. You know the water cooler?
Are you really going through the list of
Everybody has a
things you
water
do?
cooler, right?
He wants
And
affirmation.
the water cooler
Type
runs out.
in comments of
I
affirmation
replaced
for
the
him.
water cooler. I replaced that water
That's so
cooler
nice when
every
you do
day.
that, sweetheart.
And how about this one? Lock the doors before we go to sleep.
That when
I
you
don't always
lock the
remember, but she
doors,
loves that.
I feel safe.
I know you do.
You're like
Thank you.
amazing. I
Yes.
really appreciate it.
How about I've been doing this. How long have I been doing it? Maybe a year now. I'm patting myself on the back.
Okay, but we don't have 8
This
minutes.
will be the last
Okay.
one. Okay. Every night I fill the water coffee cooler, coffee
The
thermos
Keurig
up,
container, yeah.
with water.
Right.
And every morning I get up and I make Debbie coffee and I bring it to her.
And that's a new act of service. And
Yes.
he decided to do that when COVID started. And because we were like going back and forth. And he says, you know what? I'm going to do all of it. He's speaking my love language. And so he appreciates when I appreciate it.
Yes, I do.
And I do appreciate it.
So how many have we covered so far?
3.
Three?
Thank you, Sarah.
Ay, ay, ay.
And you only have a few minutes. Keep going.
We said words of affirmation,
Physical
quality
touch.
time.
Physical
No,
touch.
giving. Did we get acts of service?
Yeah. We have physical touch and,
Quality time. Physical touch. Let's do physical touch.
okay.
That's a good one. Okay. Go ahead.
So physical touch is just that. It's like if my love language is when you touch me, I just feel your love. I know that you love me when you grab for my hand. I know that you love me when you rub my neck. I know that you love me when you do this to my hair. I know that you love me when you come and give me a hug. I know when you love me when you give me a long kiss. Like if those things really satiate your need and confirm or affirm that person's love, then physical touch is your love language. And it's important. We all need that physical touch. Again, this is a great example of we all need all those love languages, but if your primary one is physical touch, you got somebody that you want to be touching a lot.
And again, I keep saying what I see in my office, but it doesn't have to be sensual because a lot of times it's misinterpreted, right? We go and we touch our partner or they touch us. My wife touches me and I'm going to make the assumption, oh, wow, okay? She wants to,
Exactly.
but maybe she didn't mean it. Maybe she just wanted to,
So if
rub my shoulders.
let's say her love language, this is what we see. If her love language is physical touch and his isn't, and he touches her, he's touching with the intention to engage in sex, right?
Yeah.
And her love language is just touch me and tell me that you love me, or because when you touch me, I just feel your love.
Yeah.
And it's not connected to sex.
Right.
So when her love language is physical touch, you want to touch her just for the sake of touching, just for the sake of saying, I love you.
And don't forget this, touching, unbelievable, is so incredibly powerful. Your oxytocin levels rise. That's your hormone of oxytocin, which is your pleasure center. It makes you feel good. So we know that when you're at an accident, site of an accident, the first thing you're going to do when you're next to somebody who's been hurt is hold their hand and say it's going to be okay. Why do we hold their hand? It brings your blood pressure down. It makes you feel good. Touching is powerful.
Actually,
really,
when you're
really
at the side of the
powerful.
accident, you're supposed to say, everything's going to be
Everything's gonna
okay.
be okay.
Help is on their way.
And hold them, right? And touch them.
Just a little side note. Okay.
Okay.
We have a question.
Question.
I think as well. I think that's 5, right?
No, we have one more.
Oh.
Receiving gifts.
Quick question. How do you guys coach couples who have a partner whose love language does not come natural to them?
Yeah, that's a really
Yeah,
good. Let me jump. I want to hear what you have to say for sure, but this one rings so true for me, because a lot of people were raised in homes where they didn't really get this kind of reaction from their parents. They didn't see a lot of gift giving. They didn't see a lot of touch. Maybe they never ever heard their parents say, I love you to each other, And so we come from a family of origin like that. We come into our partnership with our partner, and it's foreign to us. The idea of saying what we appreciate about our partner doesn't come naturally. It's very uncomfortable almost. And also receiving one can be very uncomfortable. So I think we do have to take that into account when we're practicing these love languages, and also know that you can change,
You can learn.
You can learn.
If let's say your partner, it's words of affirmation, and let's just say that I just didn't have the skill set and the mindset to do that. I just was raised and we just kept to ourselves. We didn't do stuff like that. Then I would start exploring how to do it. I would write out things that I could say to you that would maybe land. I would do a little bit of research. I might even ask you, what are some things that I can say that would make you feel really loved? So, working with your partner, you can figure it out. Physical touch. I don't touch. Let's say I don't touch. How do you like to be touched? What really works for you? And then I'll practice that.
We're running out of
communication
time.
and practice.
How about gift giving? That's the last one that we haven't talked about yet. So
gift giving is, what do you want to say about gift giving, honey?
Well, the one thing I like to say about gift giving, and this is a personal thing, is it's a very targeted thing. Like we talked about saying things that really land. Gift giving is very targeted. You know what it's like to receive a gift that doesn't feel personal at all. It's just falls flat. So the idea, like what I was saying earlier with Debbie giving me that gift of that turntable, it was so personal on so many levels. It felt so beautiful. Not just that the gift was great, but it's that she took the time to buy it, to connect with the person who needed to buy it. She was thinking about, this would be a new hobby for Craig. And she was also thinking, well, I'm going to give up that time so he can do that. So
I think when people have a love language, this is what I found of gift giving. What they say is, it's important to me because when I receive that gift, and it could be really, really small, I know that he had to think of me, he had to take his time, and through the whole process of thinking and taking his time and purchasing it, or even if it's a flower, during that period of time, I was on his mind.
Yes.
And that just touches my heart.
Yep.
That he was on my mind at a time when I didn't even know it. And that's usually at the heart of people who have gift giving as a primary love language.
I think the other thing about that's got to be considered is when you're thinking about what to buy your partner, a lot of times what we do is we think, what would I enjoy to, what kind of gift might I enjoy? For example, Debbie and I were talking earlier, a guy who gave his wife a trip, a backroads trip. But the trip was so out of range to what his wife would have wanted. He was really doing it for himself. So, you really want to target it and make sure it is what your partner really, really wants and would enjoy. And, I had, we had talked about this with my late wife. I brought her, one time I brought her roses. Every man thinks if you bring roses, that's the perfect gift. She didn't like roses. I never knew that.
I don't like roses either.
You don't like roses. A lot of people don't like roses. So we bring them roses and we expect the person to jump up and down and be thrilled.
Right. And then they complain when it's like, I bought her roses, got nothing.
Got nothing. So, that's a very important thing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we only have a few minutes left. And I just want to say that, how many minutes do we have left? 1 minute. We have 1 minute. Okay, so I just want to say this really, really quick, that love language, I hope you can see that it's really, really important to understand your love language and understand your partner's love language, and then learn how to be really good at speaking it. It's like if your husband spoke French, you would want to learn French because you would want to connect with him. And that's really what we're talking about here. And I have one more thing to say on this, and then you can wrap it up. When we know somebody's love language and we get into conflict, we have the power to use it against them. So once we know what really makes them feel loved and connected to us, we could use it as power to take it away. If words of affirmation are really important to you, I could use my words and say, you're really not even worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
I could say something really nasty to you. And if that's your primary love language, is going to hit.
Yeah.
If it's physical touch, I can withdraw my physical attention to you. Whatever your love language is, I can manipulate it to punish you. And that's obviously not what we want to do. And I only mention it is because sometimes when we're in a state of conflict, we go unconscious. Our subconscious drives our actions, and we do it without even thinking about it.
So to wrap it up, what I'd like to do is give you a challenge, okay? I'd like you to think about writing down 5 specific things that are meaningful to you and will make you feel loved and cared about. Could be any of those love languages, it doesn't matter. Just think of 5 specific things that would make you feel really loved. Now, these could be things that your partner is already doing that you want them to continue to do. It could be things that they've never done that you would love them to do, or it could be things that they used to do, but they don't do anymore. Write 5 things down, share them with each other. Share them with each other, and then choose one to implement. That's my challenge to you. Okay?
I think you can always also answer the question, in a great marriage, people always make sure they blah, blah, blah. And whatever you fill that sentence in with, probably will hit to your love language. But again, it's online, the book's available. We presented this as kind of a teaser to jump in and use it as a platform to create more love and connection, because that's what it's all about.
So that's it.
And if you want to know how to create even more love and connection, as a little commercial to our book, we have The Mindful Couple, 52 Strategies to Real Love and Connection. Yeah. And we invite you, if you want, to pick up a copy, because it's really, really like simple things in there. So
we're Craig and Debbie, and we are The Mindful Couple.
We try. Anyhow, we'll see you next week. We don't know what we're going to be talking about next week, but we hope you join us, and we'll hope to see you then. Have a great week.
Have a great night.